Are we currently seeing a global war of information that is escalating, both openly and covertly, far beyond what many of us are aware of? And to what extent does the presence of propaganda and manipulated information in news and social media threaten our democracy and our ability to make informed decisions?
Thank you for that, and I'm very pleased to be at this esteemed Norwegian event. I understand John Pilger is there. John is a very great friend of mine, and I've grown to respect him a great deal over the years. Okay, so I hope you treat him very well. Well, I have, of course, seen the debate about fake news, and when this term came up, perhaps a year ago, popularized initially by the US mainstream media, I thought to myself, you know what, this term, fake news, is going to turn around 180 degrees within a few hours and be used to criticize the oligarch-controlled press in the United States and elsewhere. And that's exactly what happened. So I was in fact, rather pleased with this term. I don't want to suggest that there isn't some newness to the phenomenon. That's not correct. There are some new things occurring. In particular, where we're moving into in relation to AI really is a potential change that human beings can have great difficulty encompassing. Essentially, if we're in a competition, as human beings have been for many years, between liars and people who detect lies, artificial intelligence means that the lies can be automated and pumped out en masse. That's not something that is happening yet to a degree where I think we need to seriously worry about it, but it will. Okay, now let's put some things into perspective. Thomas Jefferson in 1807, this is a couple of years after he had had the US presidency, keeping in mind that the US presidency back then was a much smaller affair. There was no standing army of tens or hundreds of thousands of people, and the presidential role was much more of a figurehead role. But Jefferson, who's perhaps the smartest of the founding fathers of the United States, put it like this: nothing can now be believed nothing can now be believed which is seen in a newspaper. Truth itself becomes suspicious by being put into that polluted vehicle. That's his view from that time. And he goes on to jokingly assert that, well, perhaps a new newspaper should be launched with different sections. The first section being truths, and the last section being absolute falsehoods, and in the middle, various types of claims. And the first section would be almost non-existent, and the last section quite large, and the middle padding out the rest. So it's been that way for a very, very long time. And to a degree, while most people can perceive that the media is not trustworthy, and if you look at that on various opinion polls, you will see that that is quite a common perception amongst people, that the media is not trustworthy. There is a narrative that it is. And, well, why is that? Because I think the media is, in general terms, one of the most destructive forces that has ever existed. It has led to nearly every war that we've had, certainly the wars by democracies, all the big wars that you can name, at least in the post-World War II period, and to a degree, even in World War II, were built up, their populations were mobilized on the back of lies, from the Gulf of Tonkin incident to the Iraq War, to the Gulf War. So the average death count per journalist, I did a calculation for US journalists recently, is something like 130 kills per journalist as a result of them not treating their function seriously, which is to provide, well, their supposed or claimed societal function seriously, which is to provide the truth, and instead spreading propaganda and lies of the major power establishments in the countries that they're in. So I want to, yeah, first of all, ground this debate about fake news with the reality that the news has always been fake. It has always been something that has been used to manipulate human populations en masse into absolutely disastrous outcomes in order for proprietors of news organizations to, yes, make profits by peddling salacious stories, but much more significantly, to keep their integration with existing establishments in those countries, and at a social level for each journalist and editor to ingratiate themselves socially with the very establishments they are meant to be policing. Now, the renewed talk about fake news, well, it's been taken up by Donald Trump in his critiques of CNN, for example. Okay, now, is it true that those responses by Donald Trump are motivated by a president in power trying to distract from critique of the press? Absolutely. Of course, that's the motivation. But is he nonetheless, in general terms, correct? Yes, in general terms, he is correct. CNN, I don't mean to pick on it unnecessarily. It's certainly not the only one. All the big establishment media in the United States, Fox News, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, are filled every day with very serious and misleading fake news. Okay. Now, why is the term being popularized other than politicians and other people who are criticized in the media using it to rebuff that criticism, whether that criticism is true or, as it very often is, false? Well, the US election, principally last year, saw an outbreak of uncontrolled popularism. Now, that popularism was harnessed by what is effectively neo-fascistic cultural sentiments. That's true. It was harnessed in various ways by those groups. But nonetheless, it is a democratic outburst that occurred principally because of the increased ease with which human beings can share information with each other, social media, small publishers, etc. And that, of course, has led to cultural change. It's led to cultural change, not simply because of underpinning reasons, which many people on the left talk about, such as the decline in US real wages from 1978, or by the concerns that people on the right talk about, for example, increased immigration, but rather because the establishment press is integrated with the existing order of things and is used to has been used to create that order and to maintain it. Now, whether you see a decrease in the existing order as a positive or a negative depends on where you think that is going and whether you stand to lose or gain in the process of that change. But let's do a little thought experiment. Imagine that do we accept that the press has a serious influence on society and the ideas that are passed around? Some ideas are pushed more than others, other ideas are suppressed, other ideas are introduced through the press. We all know that the press has been used to mobilize nations for illegal wars, for example. Okay, I say that in democracy, especially, the press is one of the principal controlling functions of the existing establishment, the existing order of things. So when that control structure can be worked around, social media, new publishers starting up with very little capital because of the internet, is that going to change the existing order of things? Obviously, if your claim was that the press is intimately part of the existing order of things, and there's a new press which is not part of the existing order of things, then obviously the order, the cultural order, and to some degree clearly the relative balance of who has power and who does not is going to change. So this has terribly frightened existing establishments, and those existing establishments are, of course, integrated with the establishment press by definition. So why we see such talk in the establishment press about the fear of fake news is not simply because it's another thing to be salacious about, not simply because there is to some degree a new phenomenon. It's because the change in the informational control system, of which the existing establishment press was a major component, leads to a decrease in power of the existing establishment and a decrease in power of the existing establishment press. So all those little publishers, social media, etc., are both in some sense direct rivals for establishment press power, and they are in addition something that causes the general establishment in many countries to feel that it is also losing its grip to populist forces which well up in the to populist forces that well up in the gap. Let me start again. So the existing establishments, including of course the press, which is integrated with them, see this uncontrolled phenomenon as a direct threat to their power and also to the existing order, which creates creates fear in themselves and also directly for the press itself. So the press talks about it a lot and tries to push forwards for there to be greater controls in the spreading of information. And this has then led to a very serious situation, extremely serious situation, where pressure has been applied to Facebook, Google, these giant new digital superstates, these giant intermediaries, to regain control of the informational flow system of the West, broadly speaking, to prevent outbursts of popularism and unexpected outcomes, of which the election of Donald Trump, or rather the failure to elect Hillary Clinton, is the most obvious example. And that was put in concrete terms in France in the Macron election. So feeling the heat of criticism, Facebook and Google decided to explicitly intervene in the French election. That is to say explicitly that they were setting up a mutual task force to prevent the spreading of what they called fake news during the French election. Now, is it true that fake news was spread during the French election? Of course. Fake news is spread in the mainstream press and small press and social media in every election. But the question of who determines what is fake news and what is not, of course, is decided by the forces that come together to make the claim and to make the censorship system involved. And of course, in this case, those forces wanted to see Emmanuel Macron elected and not Marine Le Pen. Now, of course, there are good reasons to be concerned about both of these candidates, but nonetheless, this was an overt intervention by Google and Facebook, American Silicon Valley companies, into the French election with the construction of a censorship system, which they said was there in order to stop what they assessed to be, or claimed to be, fake news. Okay. Perhaps we'll go on to a question. I can, of course, talk, I'd like to talk as we go ahead about where this is going in terms of artificial intelligence. And of course, I can talk in practical terms about the roles of various spy agencies and so on. But as I said, the attempts to influence the public have always been there for a very, very long time. There are some new elements, but I don't think that they're significant. What I do think is very significant is the debate by existing establishment press to say that certain forms of information spread need to be stopped. And that is then leading to a new norm of automated censorship by giant Silicon Valley companies of the information that we communicate with each other. That's very serious.